On Mother's Day, the morning Sunday, vibrant with possibility, began with the heavy scent of lilies. My son, Michael, stood in my living room, so young, so impossibly wealthy, a bouquet as bright as a promise clutched in his hand. He set it on my worn coffee table, his gaze gentle but strangely distant. "Mom," he began, "my wife still sends you $5,000 every month, right? Just making sure you're comfortable." The air seized in my lungs. $5,000. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. For 8 months, my comfort had been measured in church food packages and the quiet charity of neighbors. "Son," I whispered, my voice a thin tremor, "the church, they've been helping me get by." His smile, once so easy, fractured, then dissolved. Just then, Vanessa appeared, a vision in shimmering silk and impossibly high heels, trailing a cloud of expensive perfume that felt to me like a taunt. Her smile was dazzling, but her eyes, colder than any Texas winter I'd known. She didn't understand that in that moment, the last shimmer of her carefully constructed elegance was about to fade forever. "I am Evelyn Carter, a 67-year-old widow. This small house on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas, used to echo with laughter, the sound of my late husband, Richard, and our only son, Michael. 10 years ago, when Richard's heart gave out, I learned to live slower. My garden, Bible classes at St. Mary's, simple meals. It was enough until time became an enemy and every passing day brought new expenses. Michael, the boy I once held in my arms, is now a 38-year-old millionaire, a titan of tech, his life a blur of private jets and a Park Cities mansion where the annual property tax alone dwarfs my life's earnings. I was proud, of course. I'd raised him to be good, kind, grateful. So when he entered my sunlit living room that day, his handsome face etched with a familiar weariness, my heart swelled until his words stole the air. "Mom, my wife still sends you $5,000 every month, right?" The question was a physical blow. My heart throbbed. My fingers knotted involuntarily in the apron I'd worn since dawn. I tried to speak, but my tongue was thick, my lips dry as dust. 5,000, I repeated, the number a foreign sound. "Son, the church is helping me survive." Michael's eyes widened, his gaze flickering towards Vanessa, now gliding into the room. She wore a pearl-collared silk dress, silver heels, the rich perfume of Chanel No. 5 overpowering the sweet apple pie I'd baked for his arrival. Vanessa's smile was light, a practiced curve that could melt a room, yet held no warmth. "Oh, Mother," she purred, her voice like honey over ice. "You must have forgotten. I stop by every month with the money, remember?" I met her gaze, calm, unnervingly so. "If you did bring it," I replied, barely a whisper, "then it must have gotten lost somewhere." Silence descended, heavy and absolute. The ticking of my old wall clock seemed to amplify the hum of cars outside, the frantic beat of my own heart. Michael looked from me, gray-haired and aproned, to his glamorous wife, his brow furrowed. "Vanessa, you have been bringing the money, right? I transfer it to you every month." Vanessa tilted her head, her smile unwavering. "Of course, Michael, every month. Perhaps Mother just forgot. You know, old age. The memory isn't what it used to be." Her words were soft as feathers, but they landed on my chest like stones. Old age. I'd heard it too often since Richard passed, from people who saw a widow as little more than a fading memory. But my memory was a steel trap. Every bill, every prayer, every church face, I remembered it all. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that Vanessa had never given me a single penny. I simply nodded, choosing silence. Some battles aren't meant to be fought outright. They're meant to be observed. Michael crossed the room, his hand settling on my shoulder. Mom, it's probably just a misunderstanding. I'll check the accounts. I just want you to live comfortably, without worry. I managed a faint smile, but something had awakened inside me, a quiet storm of suspicion, a steely resolve. I said nothing more, simply cleared the table and placed a glass of orange juice before him. As he sat, Vanessa moved smoothly to his side, her hand possessively on his shoulder. Her gaze swept over me, cool, dismissive, the look of someone who believes money can buy integrity. A sudden chill filled the room, despite the blazing sun outside. Vanessa's eyes drifted to the photo frames, a young Michael, golden-haired, bright-eyed, radiantly carefree. She exhaled softly. You've done such a great job keeping the house clean, Mother, even at your age. My smile tightened. Old, yes, but not so old that I forget who comes through my door. Vanessa. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mom, come on. It's Mother's Day. Don't get upset. I just want you to be happy, my son, I said, my gaze still fixed on Vanessa. So do I. But happiness doesn't come from what people say they've done for you. It comes from what they've actually done. Michael froze. Vanessa's perfect smile stretched, then vanished. After they left, the living room felt hollow. Sunlight, once a warm embrace, now seemed to expose every speck of dust. $40,000. 8 months of quiet desperation. That money could have mended my leaking roof, replaced the failing refrigerator, softened the hard edges of my final years. Instead, I'd measured my life in canned soup and donated bread. I pressed a hand to my chest, not in anger, but a bone-deep ache, a wound unseen. That night, I opened my old notebook, usually reserved for grocery lists and prayers. On the first blank page, I wrote, Find the truth. Below it, in harsher, darker strokes, Don't trust fake tears. I slammed the notebook shut. I was not weak. I had weathered loss, crushing loneliness, and relentless struggle. This, too, I would survive. Michael might have been blinded, but I was not. If Vanessa thought I would sit quietly while she paraded her perfect lie, she had chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. I spent the rest of that afternoon in the small, sun-drenched kitchen, the cooling jasmine tea forgotten. I stared at my old phone, a tiny voice of doubt whispering, could I be wrong? A bank error? A forgotten envelope? But no, my memory, honed by necessity, was too sharp. There had been no letter, no envelope, no money. That evening, I pulled out the accounting ledger from my years as church treasurer, each line documented with precise hand. $12 for blood pressure medication, $24 for utilities, $10 for St. Mary's dinners. Every expense noted, not a single transfer from Michael Carter. The next morning at First Texas Community Bank, I sat before a young teller named Grace Foster. Please check if there have been any transfers from Michael Carter, I requested, handing her my passbook. He says he's been sending me $5,000 each month for the past 8 months. Grace looked surprised, typed a few commands, then shook her head gently. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. There's nothing. Only a $1.35 interest payment back in February. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out. The Texas wind whipped around me, mirroring the emptiness in my chest. No transfers, no envelopes, nothing. For 8 months, I had meticulously clipped coupons, chosen canned goods over fresh produce, and quietly offered gratitude for every church delivery. Eating alone, counting pennies. This was my reality. But never, not once, had I imagined the silence was a lie. I returned home, dropped my purse, and sank into the armchair. The ticking of the wall clock, a wedding gift from Richard 40 years ago, seemed to whisper, the truth is coming. That afternoon at St. Mary's Church, Father Thomas Reed, who'd known me for over 20 years, found me in the last pew after service. "Mrs. Carter, are you all right? You look tired." I managed a faint smile, discreetly clenching my trembling hands. "I'm just trying to understand why my son's letters never arrived." Father Reed placed a hand on my shoulder. "The Lord has a way of bringing truth to light. Don't lose faith." I nodded, but faith alone was no longer enough. I needed action. That night, I opened a brown leather notebook, Michael's gift for my 60th birthday. On the first page, instead of a prayer, I wrote, "If they're lying, I'll make them tell the truth through the law." I pressed the pen hard, the words glowing under the lamp like a vow. From that day forward, I began to document everything. Every visit Vanessa made, I noted the date, the time, her exact words. Thursday, June 14th. Vanessa stopped by with a cake, said, "The money's been sent. Maybe the bank's delayed." No envelope, no proof. Saturday, July 12th. Called. Said she couldn't come because of a charity meeting. Heard restaurant music in the background. Line by painstaking line, I built my case. No anger, no hatred, just the icy precision of a lifetime spent balancing ledgers where numbers never lied. Each time Vanessa Carter's white Mercedes purred into the driveway, Evelyn Carter felt the familiar knot in her stomach tighten. Vanessa, always flawless, would emerge in designer dresses, expensive handbags, and sparkling heels. She brought gifts: lavender, cookies, scented candles, but never the promised envelope. One sweltering August afternoon, as Evelyn watered her hydrangeas, Vanessa arrived, a vision in white linen, holding a bunch of freshly cut lavender. "Mother," she cooed, her smile like polished chrome, "I brought you some flowers to help you relax. Stress isn't good for the memory." Evelyn set down the watering can, wiping her hands on her apron. "My memory's just fine, Vanessa. Fine enough to recall that the last time you brought me money was never." A flicker, almost imperceptible, crossed Vanessa's face before her radiant smile clicked back into place. "Oh, Mother, you must be mistaken. I've been sending it. Your bank must be at fault." Evelyn began arranging the lavender, each placement deliberate. "Perhaps, but I already called them. They said nothing's come through for 8 months." The silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant hum of August cicadas. Even the sparrows on the fence seemed to hold their breath. Vanessa fidgeted with the delicate chain around her neck. "I'll double-check," she mumbled, then hurried back to her car, leaving behind the ghost of expensive perfume. Evelyn watched the Mercedes disappear, a bitter clarity rising in her chest. Vanessa had lied, and now she knew that Evelyn knew. That evening, in her journal, Evelyn wrote, August 22nd, lied, nervous, left early. Each word felt like a tiny hammer striking the ache inside her. She was no longer just a mother praying in silence. She was Evelyn Carter, a woman who had survived loss, debt, and empty promises. She would survive this, too, and reclaim the truth. Weeks later, Evelyn called Michael's bank, feigning innocent inquiries about family gift transfers. The polite employee couldn't divulge private details, but offered a chilling hint. If funds were transferred, they'd have to land in an account under your name. If you never received them, someone might have used a different account in your name. Evelyn closed her notebook, exhaling slowly. An account bearing her name, but not hers. She knew her adversary. Vanessa was smart, charming, and manipulative, capable even of bending her husband Michael to her will. But Evelyn had managed thousands of dollars as an accountant for 3 companies. If someone dared to forge her name, she would find them. That night, under the soft glow of her lamplight, Evelyn reread every note, her shaky yet steady handwriting a testament to her resolve. She almost saw her husband's face between the lines. "Evelyn," he used to say, "if someone underestimates you, don't shout. Let them hear the sound of the truth instead." She closed the journal, a strange calm settling over her. The next morning, Evelyn walked to Father Thomas Reed's church, a small envelope clutched in her hand. Inside were copies of her notes. "Father," she whispered, "if one day I can't come to service, please keep this safe for me." He looked at her, worried. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" She smiled gently. "I'm just preparing for the truth to be heard." Walking home, Evelyn felt an invisible weight lift. Tears, pain, and betrayal lay ahead, but she was no longer afraid. She would reclaim every single $5,000, and more than that, she would reclaim the respect they thought she'd lost with age. As the Texas sun bled crimson behind the ancient oaks, Evelyn sat on her porch, whispering, "Vanessa, you picked the wrong woman to fool. This old mother still has a few lessons left to teach you." She smiled, closing her journal, and wrote one final line. "The first step toward justice is memory." In the golden dusk, her fight had just begun. A few weeks later, the Texas air was warmer than usual, carrying the scent of dry grass and jasmine. Evelyn was trimming her lavender bushes when she heard the low growl of an expensive engine. The crunch of tires on her gravel driveway made her heart constrict. A brand new silver Lexus idled at the gate, its polished paint gleaming so brightly she had to squint. Vanessa stepped out, stunning as if from a fashion magazine, in a cream linen dress, oversized sunglasses, and mirror-shiny heels. In her hand, a large gift basket tied with a golden ribbon. "Mother," she purred, her voice sweet as honey over steel, "I brought you a little something. Michael's been in meetings all morning, so I came in his place." Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron, watching her daughter-in-law climb the porch steps. "How thoughtful. You two must be very busy," she said, her voice soft, devoid of a smile. Vanessa's gaze drifted across the garden. "Oh my, your garden is still as beautiful as ever. I don't know how you manage it all by yourself." Evelyn tucked her shears into the potting soil. "With these hands and a little patience." Vanessa placed the basket on the patio table. Fancy cookies, orange marmalade, a small bottle of wine, all neatly wrapped, but empty of warmth. Evelyn recognized the gift, expensive, pretty, and hollow. She sat in a wooden chair, poured 2 glasses of iced tea, and looked Vanessa directly in the eye. "Vanessa, let me ask you something. Where's this month's money? The $5,000 you said you'd bring?" For a split second, Vanessa's smile froze, a fleeting cloud. Then she laughed, a brittle, hollow sound like glass on glass. "Oh, Mother, I must have left it in the car." Her voice pitched slightly higher as she toyed with a glass of tea, not drinking. Evelyn glanced at the Lexus, gleaming in the sun, its newness underscored by temporary plates. "Nice car, Vanessa. Must have cost a bit." Vanessa shrugged, her laugh tightening. "Oh, not really, Mother. Just upgraded for convenience. My boutique work requires a professional image." Evelyn's voice remained calm. "Of course, a new car for work and old envelopes that keep getting left in the car." How odd. Vanessa's face stiffened for a fraction of a second before she forced another smile. "Oh, Mother, you don't trust me anymore. Next time I'll bring the bank receipt. All right?" Evelyn didn't reply. They sat in silence, the porch fan whirring softly, the cicada's restless hum filling the void. Vanessa rose first, checking her watch. "I have to run, client meeting, but I'll remind Michael to resend the money through the bank." "So sorry for any mix-up." Evelyn nodded. "All right, go on then." Oh, and don't forget the envelope in your car this time. Vanessa paused, a thin smile on her lips, annoyance warring with caution. You're very sharp, Mother. She turned to leave, her heels striking the wooden steps with a steady, cold rhythm, like a ticking clock. The car door slammed, the engine roared, and the Lexus vanished, leaving a blinding streak of sunlight. When the sound faded, Evelyn sat back down, fingers interlaced, a heavy weight pressing on her chest. All doubts were gone. She knew. She walked back into the house, each step echoing like a heartbeat. From her drawer, she pulled out the brown leather notebook and wrote, September 10th. Vanessa came alone, brought a gift basket, claimed she left money in the car. New Lexus, no proof, voice unsteady, avoided eye contact. She set the pen down, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve was unshakable. That afternoon, Evelyn walked to the old post office, where the public phone still worked. She wouldn't call from home, not with Vanessa potentially watching. She dialed Michael's company, her tone steady. Hello, this is Evelyn Carter, Michael Carter's mother. I'd like to speak with someone in accounting. It's a personal matter. After a short hold, Rachel Boyd, the head accountant, answered, Mrs. Carter, how can I help you? Evelyn gripped the receiver. Thank you, Rachel. I just need to confirm something small. My son said his company has been deducting $5,000 each month from his personal account to send to me. I'd like to know if that's correct. A brief pause. Then Rachel's hesitant voice. Mrs. Carter, I can't disclose personal financial details, but let me check. Yes, I recall seeing automated transfers on the same day every month for that exact amount. It does appear the money was sent, but I'm not sure to whom. Evelyn's voice tightened. To whom? It wasn't sent to me. I'm not certain, Mrs. Carter. The recipient's name matches yours, but the account number is different. I assumed it was yours. A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. She forced herself to speak evenly. Thank you, Rachel. That's all I needed for now. She hung up, standing motionless in the phone booth. Her heart raced, but her mind was crystal clear. The truth. Someone had created a fake account under her name, and only one person was close enough to pull it off. Vanessa. On the walk home, Evelyn's shadow stretched long across the road. The wind carried the scent of scorched grass and dry earth, a smell that recalled poor Texas summers, long ago, when her father used to say, If you want to know who's honest, look at their hands. Honest hands, he'd always said, carried the marks of work. Evelyn thought of Vanessa's hands, long manicured fingers adorned with diamond rings, clutching designer handbags, not a single callus, not a trace of honest labor. That night, Evelyn skipped dinner. A cup of peppermint tea cradled in my hands, I sat at the kitchen table, bathed in the soft yellow glow of the overhead light. The house whispered around me, so quiet I could hear the last cicadas outside, their chorus fading into the encroaching night. I opened a fresh page in my ledger and inscribed the date, September 10th. Beneath it, the words flowed, a chronicle of calculated deception. Vanessa visited Elegant, feigning concern. New car, same old lies. Called Michael's company, confirmed. The money is still being transferred, but not to my account. Tomorrow, the truth begins its ascent. My pen halted and I closed the notebook. The small lamp on the table mirrored my reflection in the window pane. A silver-haired woman, small of stature, yet with eyes that held an unyielding fire. Tomorrow I would shed the mantle of a waiting mother. I would become a seeker of justice. Turning off the light, I stepped onto the porch. The night breeze carried the delicate perfume of jasmine and the damp, earthy scent of old wood. In the shadowed corner of the garden, moonlight caressed the worn wooden bench where Richard and I used to share our quiet conversations. My fingers traced its smooth, cool grain. "Richard," I whispered, "if you were still here, you'd tell me to do what's right, wouldn't you?" The only reply was the soft rustle of wind beneath the eaves, yet I understood. It was an answer. I returned inside, securing the door, and stood for a moment before the mirror. The woman staring back was not weary or defeated. She was Evelyn Carter, a mother who would no longer surrender her dignity. And I knew, with an unwavering certainty, that with the dawn, Vanessa's carefully constructed charade would begin to unravel, piece by careful piece. The following morning, as I gathered lavender stems for drying, a sharp, unyielding knock echoed through the house, not the gentle tap of the mail carrier, nor the familiar cadence of a neighbor. This was deliberate, insistent. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door. On my porch stood a tall man, middle-aged, his graying hair neatly combed, dressed in a charcoal suit that hinted at long journeys. He offered a polite, almost practiced smile and a slight nod. "Mrs. Evelyn Carter, I'm Arthur Blake, chief accountant at your son's company, Carter and Partners." My gaze narrowed. "Arthur Blake? I only know Rachel Boyd, the accountant I spoke with yesterday." He nodded slowly. "Rachel is my assistant. She relayed your call, and I felt, perhaps there are things you should know." His voice, though calm, carried a serious undertone, a faint echo of regret. I invited him in, pouring him a glass of water. Morning light streamed through the window, highlighting the fine lines etched on his face, the quiet weariness of a man who'd witnessed more than he cared to openly admit. He placed a worn leather briefcase on the table, opening it to reveal a thick folder, meticulously clipped and organized. Within lay sharp printed texts, rows of numbers, the precise language of accounting, a world I had navigated for 30 years before retirement. He slid the folder towards me. "These are copies," he began, his voice slow and even, "of 8 transfers, each for $5,000, $40,000 in total. The recipient, an account under the name Vanessa Carter." A jolt, cold and sudden, ran through me. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. Sender, Michael Carter. Recipient, Vanessa Carter. Bank verified, $5,000 every month for 8 months. Like clockwork. I looked up, my voice a raw whisper. "Mr. Blake, who opened that account?" He sighed, removing his glasses to meticulously wipe them. "Your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Carter. Every supporting document bears her signature and an authorization from Michael." I froze. "Authorization? Michael allowed her to use my name?" He nodded, a subtle tightening around his lips. "Most likely he didn't scrutinize the forms. She presented a copy of your ID, which I suspect was forged, quite skillfully. The system automatically registered it as your account, even though the beneficiary was hers." I pressed a hand to my forehead, the room tilting. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a profound, scorching humiliation. For 8 months, Vanessa had exploited my name, a mother's name, to siphon money from my own son. "And Michael?" I asked quietly. "He doesn't know?" Blake hesitated. "Honestly, I don't believe he does. Michael is a diligent man, but he trusts too easily. He permits Vanessa to manage much of the paperwork. And there's more." He met my gaze. "She's also been using the company credit card for personal expenses." My eyes widened. "The company card?" "Yes, the corporate credit card of Carter and Partners. It's designated for client entertainment and business, but we've recently flagged irregular charges. Spa visits, jewelry, high-end clothing, even first-class flights to New York. Over $30,000 in just 3 months. I sat in stunned silence. Spa, jewelry, flights. The words echoed like a hammer against metal in my mind. I turned to the window, the morning sun now glowing over the wooden bench where Vanessa and I had once sipped tea, she chatting idly about her work. "Mother, Michael's so busy," she'd said that day. "I handle everything for him." Now I understood everything. It meant every single dollar. I turned back to Arthur Blake, my voice hoarse but firm. "Mr. Blake, if I choose to pursue this, will you help me?" He held my gaze, his gray-blue eyes steady. "Mrs. Carter, I believe in justice, but I also believe in evidence. We must prepare meticulously, or she will twist the narrative and turn Michael against you. Vanessa is not an easy opponent." "I know," I replied, a bitter taste in my mouth. "I've seen her do it before, smiling while she lies." Blake offered a thin, grim smile. "I will help, but give me time to gather everything. I need to pull all transaction histories, related documents, and secure written confirmation from the bank that this account is not yours. It will take a few days, but I promise we will have the truth." I looked at him, and in his quiet resolve, I saw something I hadn't encountered in a long time. Integrity. "Thank you, Mr. Blake," I said softly. "You have no idea what this means to me." He closed the folder and stood. "I am simply doing what is right, Mrs. Carter. And I regret to say, cases like yours are far more common than you might imagine. Many are betrayed by those closest to them." I nodded, my eyes drawn to a framed family photo on the wall. Michael at 10, grinning beside his father. I remembered that day, a light drizzle in the air, and Richard's quiet words. "Teach him, Maggie, to know the difference between good men and smooth talkers. They often wear the same smile." After Arthur Blake left, the click of the door echoing the sudden quiet, I was left alone with a stack of papers, every single transfer meticulously detailed, each line a sharp shard of betrayal. I carefully placed them into a small metal box, sliding it beneath the cabinet. Turning the key, it felt less like locking a box and more like sealing away the last remnants of my trust. As afternoon sunlight bled across the porch, illuminating the silver in my hair, I brewed a cup of black tea and returned to the kitchen table. The lavender swayed gently in the garden outside, a tableau of deceptive peace. But within me, a quiet fire had ignited. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and with deliberate strokes wrote, September 11th, Mr. Blake delivered records, 8 transfers, $5,000 each, to an account under Vanessa Carter's name. She's also using the company card for personal gain. Michael was deceived, not just my money, but his too. I have an ally. The fight begins. I set down the pen, a subtle lightness settling over me. Outside, the sky burned crimson, a fiery streak slashing across the clouds. In a low, steady voice, I spoke to the empty room. "Vanessa, you forgot I worked as an accountant for 40 years. I can read lies and numbers. This time, the numbers will speak for me." I closed the notebook. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. There was a witness, someone willing to stand by my side. That night, I slept better than I had in ages. The crickets in the yard seemed to count out a steady rhythm of hope. In my dream, Arthur Blake stood in a column of white light, holding the file open, while Vanessa recoiled, her face contorted as each secret peeled away. Waking, I knew I was no longer a victim. I was the one setting the truth in methodical motion. 3 days later, every fact arrayed in my mind as precisely as columns on a balance sheet, I made my move. I called Michael. His voice, warm and familiar, held a hint of exhaustion. "Mom, I'm sorry I've been swamped lately. Vanessa says she's been visiting you regularly, right?" I smiled, letting my tone remain light. "She has, son. Vanessa is very thoughtful. I'm thinking of inviting you both to dinner this Sunday. It's been far too long since we've had a proper meal together." Michael agreed happily, utterly oblivious to the razor-thin wire hidden within my invitation. I spent all Sunday morning in preparation, not for a perfect meal, but to craft an atmosphere of utter normality. Honey-roasted chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, apple walnut salad, and apple pie, Michael's childhood favorites. I polished Richard's old silverware and adorned the dining table with soft candlelight. Everything was meticulously arranged, warm, sincere, just enough to coax a liar into dropping her guard. At the strike of 6, the familiar hum of an engine reached me from the gate. A gleaming silver Lexus glided into the driveway. Vanessa emerged first, flawless as always, soft waves cascading around her shoulders, a jade silk dress, and the faint, expensive whisper of Dior. Michael followed, a bouquet of white lilies in hand. "Mom, you look wonderful," he grinned, placing the flowers on the table. "Son," I replied, "I'm better than ever, thanks to God's grace, and the two of you." Vanessa offered one of her familiar, self-satisfied smiles, her lips curving just so, the look of a woman certain she held every string. I poured wine and tea. We chatted about the weather, the lavender in bloom, the new neighbors down the street. The conversation flowed, as if no shadow of doubt had ever darkened this house. I allowed the warmth of the room to settle, permitted her to relax. When the main course was served, I met her gaze, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "I truly appreciate you both," I began, my voice soft yet clear. "Especially for this month's $5,000. Vanessa paused, the fraction of a second almost imperceptible, then flashed a brilliant smile and raised her wine glass. "Oh, Mother, please don't be so formal," Clara Hayes purred, her smile wide and smug, a practiced performance of modesty. "I'm just doing what I should." She tilted her head towards David as if to say, "See, everything's fine." I nodded, feigning a shy contentment. "I'm just thrilled. Thanks to that money, I bought a new heater. Texas gets chilly early, you know." My gaze lingered on Clara. Then, with a casualness that betrayed nothing, I let the question drift into the air. "Oh, Clara, I'm curious. What day do you usually send it?" She didn't hesitate. The reply was instant, a reflex honed by repetition. "The 10th every month, Mother." I gave a light nod, but before I could speak, David's voice cut through the air, tinged with a delicate confusion. "Wait, not the 10th, honey. I set the auto transfer for the 15th. A sudden, sharp silence fell over the dining room, as stark as the clink of a knife against a ceramic plate. A liar caught in her own snare. Clara forced a brittle smile, blinking rapidly. David's brow furrowed, his head tilting. "Really?" she tried, her laugh strained. "I thought you said the 10th. "No, I'm sure it's the 15th, David insisted, his voice firming. "I picked that day because that's when payroll hits." The room chilled further, a sudden stillness descending. I smiled gently, setting my fork down. "Oh, wonderful. I'll just go to the bank on the 15th then, to make sure the system isn't having issues." Clara's laughter emerged, a reedy sound, thin as ice. "Oh, Mother, you're so careful. Don't worry, I've been sending it regularly." David nodded, but his eyes had shifted, a new glint of scrutiny now in his gaze as he turned to his wife. Before he could speak, Clara deftly pivoted the conversation to work and the weather, her voice a practiced distraction. I watched them, a clean, perfect calm settling within me, the calm of a hunter who has laid the perfect trap. After dinner, the scent of crisp apple pie, heavy with cinnamon, filled the air. David praised the dessert, but Clara barely touched hers, her eyes darting to her watch, a palpable eagerness to escape. I knew she was struggling to breathe in a room she once believed she controlled. At the door, as they prepared to leave, I spoke softly. "Thank you both for coming." I haven't laughed this much in a long time. And remember, I added, my voice light, I'll check the account on the 15th, just to be sure the bank system isn't acting up. Clara forced another smile. Yes, Mother, I'm sure there won't be any problem. David kissed my cheek, his eyes as gentle as always, but I saw a faint new line of doubt etched beside them. As their Lexus pulled away, I stood in the doorway, watching the tail lights diminish into the night. The Texas wind rustled through the yard, rattling the wooden frame of the door. I stepped inside, closing it softly behind me. What I felt wasn't triumph, but a profound release. I walked straight to the small office off the kitchen and powered on the computer. The screen's glow illuminated my husband's photo, his kind smile a quiet push forward. I opened my email and began to type, addressing the only two people I trusted now. Arthur Blake, the honest accountant, and Grace Foster, my old college friend, now a specialist in financial fraud. My heartbeat was steady, my eyes clear. Subject, it's time to begin. Arthur, Grace, everything's ready. I just confirmed Clara lied about the transfer date. They think I believe them, but they contradicted each other right to my face. I want us to move forward with the plan. Please start checking all transactions and prepare the comparison file. By the 15th, I want every piece of evidence lined up. It's time for her to self-destruct. Evelyn. I reread the last line, a faint smile touching my lips. Self-destruct brought a lightness, not from vengeance, but from the certainty that justice would come from the liar's own hands. I hit send and leaned back. Outside, the night breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the scent of jasmine and damp soil. I closed my eyes, listening to the rhythmic tick of the clock, counting down to the 15th, the day the truth would begin to fracture. 2 days later, Arthur's reply landed in my inbox, short and to the point, just like the man himself. I obtained confirmation from the bank. The account under your name was opened by Clara with forged documents. They'll release data once we have a subpoena. Grace will handle that. Everything is moving in the right direction. B. I read it, my chest tightening, then loosening, like an old iron gate swinging open. I am not cruel. I simply want the truth spoken, so my son can awaken. I want Michael to understand that trust is not a blank check for someone to drain until nothing is left. That night, a small ritual. I opened my notebook and added another line. September 13th. Dinner went perfectly. Clara exposed herself. Michael began to doubt. 15th. Bank check. Justice is coming. Soft as a breeze. I closed the notebook and blew out the candle. Moonlight filtered through the window, painting my face in the darkness. I looked in the mirror at the silver-haired woman, slight yet bright-eyed, and whispered to myself, or perhaps to my long-gone husband, Richard, do you see? She thinks she's clever, but her own mouth tightened the noose. All I have to do is stay quiet and wait for the 15th. My small smile warmed the room. The trap was set, and the prey was walking in. The next morning, the Texas sky was impossibly clear. I sat by the window, a cup of hot jasmine tea warming my hands, a strange calm possessing me. Today was the day Arthur had promised to deliver. In just a few hours, every lie would be stark black ink on white paper. Around 8 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Arthur. Mrs. Carter. His voice was steady and low. It's all done. I've just sent you the full statements with related invoices. Grace has reviewed them. She says, with your signature, we can open a legal case. I thanked him softly, struggling to keep my voice from trembling. I never imagined that at my age, I'd need an accountant and a lawyer just to protect the money my son intended for me. 15 minutes later, the mail carrier knocked. A large, sealed manila envelope, stamped, Confidential Carter Financial Records, lay on my table. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside were dozens of pristine printouts, 8 transfers, each for $5,000, $40,000 in total. Sender, Michael Carter. Recipient, Vanessa Carter. Bold, even lines on official bank paper. I read them twice, still feeling a disbelief, as if the numbers mocked my faith. At the bottom, Arthur's blue ink note. Mrs. Vanessa Carter used this as a personal account. In addition to the 8 transfers, there are other charges via the secondary card: spa, shopping, travel, and a new car lease. Total spending over 8 months, $47,800. I sat still, morning light slipping through the blinds, casting a pale gold over the pages, the color of truth. I turned to the next sheet. A spa receipt in Houston for $1,200. Cancun travel for 2 people, $3,600. A new Lexus purchase with a $15,000 down payment. Each receipt was a small, precise knife. I remembered her walking into my house, perfumed and polished, gifts in hand, smiling softly. "Mother, I just want you to know I care for you like my own." Now I understood. Care meant draining every dollar under my name. I sat for a long time, breathing deeply, then reached for my brown leather notebook, my justice journal. Under the date, I wrote carefully, one clear word at a time. September 17th, received Arthur's records. 8 transfers of $5,000, all into Clara's hands. Spa, travel, new car, $47,800, the price of trust. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the surge of reclaiming the dignity that had been stolen. That afternoon, Grace Foster called. Her voice was firm and precise, the tone of someone seasoned by tough courtrooms. "Evelyn, I've reviewed everything Arthur sent. It's all solid. This is a textbook case of financial exploitation of an elder. We can go criminal or civil, your call." I paused, then answered quietly, "Not yet. I don't want the court to see it before Michael does. He needs to witness it with his own eyes. Only then will justice mean something." Grace was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "You're right. Nothing hurts more than a son realizing his wife has exploited his mother's trust." I nodded. "That's why I'd like Father Thomas Reed to help me. Arrange a small charity evening, a pretext so they'll come." Grace gave a soft, knowing laugh. "A staged night to expose the truth. Smart, Evelyn. I'll ask Arthur to condense the file. Give Michael a brief summary he can't ignore." Near dusk, I drove to St. Mary's, the red evening light washing over the old stone steps. Father Thomas Reed was arranging wooden chairs in the hall. After I explained the plan, he thought for a moment, then smiled kindly. "Sometimes the Lord doesn't need thunder to reveal sin, Evelyn. He only needs the small light of truth." I squeezed his hand in thanks. I just want Michael to see that light, not for revenge, but so he stops being blind. On the way home, I stopped by the corner store for a few supplies for the evening I was planning. Everything outside looked peaceful, with no hint that in just a few days, Vanessa's whole world would come crashing down. That evening, I reopened Arthur's file. I spread everything across the dining table, every statement, every receipt, every piece of evidence. With a red pen, I marked the large withdrawals, then slipped them into a thick beige envelope. On the front, I wrote in bold, steady letters, "Donation documents, Senior Assistance Fund." Only I knew there wasn't a single donation inside, just guilt and deceit. I sat staring at the papers for a long time. My hands trembled, not from fear of retaliation, but because I could feel my heart beating strong again after months of numbness. For so long, I thought I was just a widowed old woman, living simply, someone who needed to be taken care of. But looking at that pile of proof, I realized I was never weak. The night sky stretched, a velvet canvas stitched with a million distant stars. Wind chimes whispered secrets between gusts, and the gentle chirrup of crickets punctuated the profound quiet. I stood by the window, a glass of water cool in my hand, and let my husband's words echo through the silence. If someone hurts you, don't pray for their apology. Let them see their reflection. I whispered the last part aloud, a promise to the stillness. I'm about to do exactly that. Around 8 p.m., the phone chirped. Arthur Blake's familiar voice offered his customary quiet assurance. Evelyn, just calling to say Grace has everything prepared should you decide to file, but I respect your timing. Prudence is a virtue. Vanessa will expose herself soon enough. A faint smile touched my lips. I know. Thank you, Arthur. You've been more than an accountant. You've helped me believe in justice again. After we disconnected, I tucked the file into the cabinet, beneath the drawer holding faded family photographs. On top, I left a small note. This is evidence not just of fraud, but of a mother who refuses to stay silent. The soft, metallic click of the lock was a small sound, yet definitive a promise kept. That night, one stark sentence found its way into my journal. Arthur gathered statements, receipts, travel tickets, and the new car papers. Vanessa spent over $40,000, all from the mother's allowance account. Grace confirmed enough proof for an elder financial exploitation case, but I won't take it to court yet. My son needs to see it first. Father Thomas Reed would help stage the fake charity dinner. An unassuming envelope would rest in the center of the table. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the trembling anticipation of reclaiming my dignity. Tonight, I would sleep in peace. The pen clicked against the paper. The desk lamp cast a warm sepia glow on an old photograph. Michael as a boy, his smile pure and guileless, nestled beside the sweet-faced woman he'd married. I traced his childhood image. You once told me, Mom, you're the person I trust most in the world. I whispered. I'll make you remember that. I extinguished the light and walked slowly to my room. The night breeze, carrying the faint perfume of lavender from the garden, stirred the curtains. Lying beneath the blanket, a lightness bloomed in my chest, the oppressive weight of months of humiliation finally lifting. For the first time in 8 long months, I slept peacefully, not because Vanessa had faced punishment, but because I knew truth was on my side. I had never loved a Sunday evening more. The late Texas sunlight, rich and amber, bathed the small garden, turning the lavender vines to liquid gold. In the kitchen, the red wine beef stew murmured softly on the stove, filling the air with the comforting scent of herbs and long-cooked beef, Michael's favorite since he was knee-high. Mom's stew tastes better than any restaurant, he'd always proclaimed on his birthday. Tonight, I wasn't cooking from love, but as part of a ritual, a final dinner for my son, to witness the truth I had too long concealed. On the table, a crisp white cloth covered antique porcelain dishes, flanked by 3 delicate wine glasses. In the very center, a beige envelope lay like an uninvited guest, patiently awaiting acknowledgement. Around 7 p.m., the familiar crunch of tires on the driveway announced their arrival. Through the window, I watched Michael and Vanessa step from the car. He, in a simple white shirt, looked like the son I knew. She, as always, was a vision of calculated excess. A pale pink silk dress, new heels, and pearls gleaming at her throat. Mom. Michael's embrace was tight, familiar. I miss this smell. Your stew. It smells like home. I smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder. I made it for you, just like old times. Vanessa lingered behind him, her polished, vacuous smile plastered firmly in place. Oh, how cozy. You always make dinner feel so special, Mother. I held her gaze. Yes, tonight will be very special indeed. 15 minutes later, Father Thomas Reed arrived, a large white-wrapped envelope tucked under his arm. "Sorry I'm late," he offered, handing it to me. "Here are the donation papers you asked me to bring." I nodded my thanks, gesturing him to join us. Vanessa tilted her head, her voice syrupy. "Oh, so this really is a charity dinner? Mother, I thought you were joking." I poured wine, my smile gentle. "Yes, a dinner to talk about trust, giving, and honesty." The words made Vanessa stiffen, a flicker of unease crossing her features before she smoothly rearranged them. Michael, oblivious to the subtle currents, continued to smile. Once everyone was seated, I opened Father Reed's envelope. Inside, the papers were meticulously arranged, Arthur Blake's precision evident in every line. I pulled out the stack and spread the first sheet on the table. "Son," I began, my voice steady, "this is the list of donations for me over the past 8 months. I think you should take a look." Michael's brow furrowed. "Donations? Mom, I've been sending you the transfers every month." I slid the statement toward him. The bold print was unmistakable. Recipient, Vanessa Carter. Amount, $5,000. Date, 15th of each month. Michael fell silent, his eyes scanning the page, confusion morphing into shock. Vanessa interjected, her voice sweet but suddenly pitched high. "Oh, that must be some mix-up, Mother. You've been getting the money, right? Banks make mistakes with recipient names all the time." My voice remained calm. "Is that so? Then what about this spa bill in Houston, around $1,200, charged to the secondary card under your name? Was that the bank's mistake too?" Her face stiffened, but she forced a brittle laugh. "Oh dear, maybe someone used my name by accident." Before she could finish, a deep, resonant voice cut through the air from the doorway. "No, Mrs. Carter, no one used your name by accident. I'm the one who prepared those records." Everyone turned. Arthur Blake stood at the threshold, a stack of folders in his hands. I had summoned him, but kept his arrival a secret. Vanessa's face went white. Michael looked at the newcomer, utterly bewildered. "Who are you?" "I'm Arthur Blake," he stated, his voice firm. "Chief accountant at your firm, and the one your mother authorized to investigate the transfers made under her name." The air in the dining room became impossibly still. I rose, finally facing Vanessa. "Arthur can verify every amount, every signature, every transaction. 8 transfers, $5,000 each. Not once did they reach me." Michael turned to his wife, his voice cracking. "Vanessa, what is this?" She clutched his hand, tears welling in her eyes. I just borrowed it, that's all. I was going to pay it back. I didn't want to upset your mother." I sighed softly. 8 months of borrowing, and by forging bank papers under your mother-in-law's name? Vanessa sobbed harder, but her tears held no hint of guilt, only stark desperation. Michael yanked his hand away, his eyes burning. "What did you do to my mother?" he roared, his voice shaking with fury. "I sent that money so she could live comfortably. You used it for cars, spas, vacations, and lied to my face." Vanessa recoiled, her face utterly drained. "You don't understand. Michael slammed his palm on the table. The glasses rattled violently. The room plunged into a terrifying silence, broken only by Vanessa's ragged breathing and the frantic thrum of my own heartbeat. Father Thomas Reed, who had remained impassive throughout, folded his hands and spoke in a low, steady tone. "Sometimes God doesn't need to punish the guilty. He just lets them see their true reflection." I settled back into my chair, my gaze fixed on Vanessa. "You know," I said, my voice calm, "I didn't need that money. What I needed was respect. And you took that, not just from me, but from your husband, too." Vanessa's sobs intensified, stammering, "Mother, I'm sorry. I just wanted to help Michael manage things better. I didn't mean—" I shook my head. "Stop lying. You didn't manage. You stole." Arthur stepped forward, placing a final meticulous file in front of Michael. "These are the originals, Mr. Carter. Forged authorizations, bank records, and receipts. Keep them. You'll need them to protect what's yours." Michael said nothing, staring at the damning numbers. Slowly, he lifted his eyes to mine. In them, I saw pain, shame, and the first glimmer of awakening. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was such a fool to trust her." I laid a hand on his shoulder. "No, son, the mistake isn't in trust. It's in those who betray it." Vanessa burst into a fresh torrent of sobs, glancing wildly around for an escape. "I can't take this anymore," she shrieked, then abruptly stood. "I don't need anyone's pity. If you want to believe her, go ahead." She snatched her purse and stormed out, her heels striking the wooden floor, each click a resonant final note. Michael didn't move. He simply sat, head bowed. The door slammed shut. Silence descended once more. No more crying, no more excuses, only the fading scent of stew and the heavy, undeniable presence of truth. I looked at the open envelope, the scattered papers, a testament to 8 months of deceit. I exhaled softly. "It's done," I said quietly. "The curtain has fallen." Arthur nodded, beginning to gather the files. Father Thomas Reed rose and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You've done what not every mother has the courage to do, Evelyn." I offered a faint smile, but inside an empty ache persisted. This victory brought no joy, only a profound sense of release. When everyone had gone, I remained. I cleared the table, the half-eaten plates, the red wine glasses, the chair where Vanessa had sat, still faintly warm. I surveyed the room, every word, every glance replaying in my mind. 8 months of deception had shattered like glass in a single evening. I gathered the scattered pages, stacking them neatly back into the envelope. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the raw, potent sensation of dignity finally reclaimed. Outside, the wind rose, lifting the curtains. I looked up at the sky, moonlight streaming through the window, shining like a beacon on the envelope, a seal of truth. I knew every lie eventually comes to light, and tonight it had, right here in my own home. I picked up the envelope, noticing the subtle blue stamp, Texas County Court. My chest tightened. I had known this moment would come, but seeing it, feeling the weight of the official notice, Case number 23, CF 98-1, Evelyn Carter, Plaintiff versus Vanessa Carter, Defendant, Elder Financial Exploitation and Family Fraud, still made my heart heavy. Grace had moved faster than I'd expected. A short message had arrived moments before. All evidence filed. The letter lay flat on the cool, polished dining table, a stark white against the dark wood. Afternoon light, fractured into stripes by the blinds, fell across Mr. Arthur Blake's thick folder, left from the week before. I ran a fingertip over its smooth cover, the material cold, yet inside it held the heated truth of 8 months of betrayal. Justice felt close, a predator stalking its prey, but in my chest only a strange, hollow quiet resided. The morning of the preliminary hearing dawned gray and blustery. The wind, sharp as a drawn blade, whispered promises of something breaking. I arrived early, Grace Foster a steadfast presence beside me, her brown coat a sober counterpoint to the storm brewing within us. "You holding up, Evelyn?" she asked, her gaze cutting through the facade. As we stepped into the cavernous main hall, I pressed my lips together, the taste of ash in my mouth. "I am," I managed, the words catching. I wish it didn't have to come to this." The courthouse corridor stretched ahead, a sterile expanse of glossy white tiles, smelling faintly of old coffee, stale paper, and coiled tension. Unfamiliar, yet it offered an odd sense of safety. Inside the courtroom, Vanessa Carter was already seated. Her black suit was a stark silhouette at the defendant's table, hair pulled back, face pale, eyes performing a fragile calm. Beside her sat a young lawyer, radiating last-minute jitters. Michael Carter sat a few rows behind them, alone, a silent sentinel. He didn't meet my gaze, or Vanessa's. His eyes were hollowed, sunken, profoundly tired. When I finally sat, Vanessa turned, offering a faint, almost imperceptible smile, a fractured mix of defiance and despair. The judge's gavel cracked, a sharp final sound. The court is now in session for the case of elder financial exploitation, Evelyn Carter versus Vanessa Carter. Grace stood first, her file opening with a crisp snap. Her voice, clear and steady, filled the hush. Your Honor, for 8 consecutive months, the defendant, Mrs. Vanessa Carter, used a fraudulent bank account under her mother-in-law's name to misappropriate a total of $40,000. Additionally, the defendant used a company secondary credit card belonging to Carter and Partners for personal expenses, including spa services, international travel, and a private vehicle purchase. The courtroom held its breath, the only sound the soft rustle of paper as Grace laid out the evidence. Bank statements, spa receipts, the Lexus invoice, Cancun flight details, each carefully placed before the judge. She paused, her gaze locking with Vanessa's. The defendant not only took money from her mother-in-law, a 67-year-old widow, but concealed it by forging legal documents and falsifying bank signatures. This, Grace declared, her voice now ablaze, was a deliberate, systematic act of deception. Vanessa's young lawyer scrambled to his feet, a flurry of nervous energy. Your Honor, my client maintains this was merely a misunderstanding in household financial management. Mrs. Evelyn Carter is elderly and may have misremembered the transfers from her son's account and household expenses. My blood began to simmer. Vanessa, head bowed, feigning fragility, looked up, her voice trembling. Your Honor, my mother-in-law's been forgetful lately. I've brought her money many times, but she doesn't remember. I never meant to hurt anyone. Maybe she just misunderstood. Her words were icy shards in my chest. I wanted to leap up, to scream, but Grace's hand on my shoulder was a quiet anchor, a signal to remain calm. She stepped forward, her voice honed to a steel edge. Your Honor, Mrs. Evelyn Carter's memory is sharp enough to document in detail every single day Miss Carter visited and everything she said. And here, Grace announced, pulling out my worn brown leather notebook, holding it aloft, is her journal to prove it. In this, Mrs. Carter recorded 8 full months of visits, dates, times, and even the defendant's exact words. Every line and page perfectly matches the bank transaction data. If this is what you call memory loss, then it's the sharpest one I've ever seen. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. The judge peered over his glasses, slowly flipping through the pages of the file, a deepening frown etched on his face. He turned toward Arthur Blake, invited as an expert witness. Mr. Blake, the judge said, his voice curt, do you confirm the figures in this report? Arthur Blake stood, adjusting his tie with a precise, almost imperceptible gesture. Your Honor, I am the chief accountant at Carter and Partners. I confirm that all statements and reconciliations are authentic. Each transfer was made from Mr. Michael Carter's personal account to an account opened under the name Evelyn Carter. However, that account was in fact opened and controlled by the defendant, Mrs. Vanessa Carter. The judge nodded, his expression now unyielding. I glanced at Vanessa. Her head was bowed, nails digging into her palms, her face bone white. Grace continued, her voice resonating with quiet power. Your Honor, under the Texas Elder Protection Act, the defendant's conduct constitutes elder financial exploitation and marital financial fraud. We request that the court order the defendant to return the full amount, including interest and court fees, and prohibit her from managing or accessing any financial accounts belonging to Mr. Michael Carter for the next 5 years. No one spoke. The only sound was the steady, rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. The judge lifted his head, his voice firm and final. After reviewing all documents, testimonies, and evidence, the court rules the defendant, Mrs. Vanessa Carter, shall repay the full $40,000 to Mrs. Evelyn Carter. The defendant is hereby stripped of access to and management rights over her husband, Mr. Michael Carter's financial accounts. The defendant must also complete a mandatory 6-month financial rehabilitation program. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck 3 times, dry and cold, like the sound of a steel door locking shut. Vanessa sank into her chair, her composure shattering. Tears, bright and glistening, spilled down her cheeks. She turned to Michael, her voice a ragged whisper. You have to believe me. I didn't mean to. Michael said nothing. He simply looked at her, his eyes still achingly empty, then slowly turned away. The sight was a crack in my own heart. I felt no joy, no triumph, only a dull ache. To reclaim justice, I had watched my son lose his marriage. I had once dreamed he would find happiness with someone who loved and cared for him, build a warm home of his own. Now, that dream lay buried somewhere between the pages of a court file. Grace placed a hand on my shoulder, her voice gentle. You did the right thing, Evelyn. You didn't just protect yourself, you saved your son. I nodded, but my lips couldn't form a smile. Justice, I realized, was a double-edged sword. It cut through the chains of deceit, but also severed the fragile threads of family. When I left the courthouse, the sky had darkened completely. Rain began to fall, heavy drops splashing onto the stone steps, shattering into 1,000 smaller ones. I stood under the awning, watching, the cold rain against my skin a strange kind of cleansing. There was no applause, no cheers, no sense of victory, only the quiet peace of someone who had walked the full circle of truth. I whispered softly, as if speaking to the falling rain, Michael, I don't know if you can forgive me, but at least I've held on to the one thing I could never afford to lose, the truth. The rain kept falling as I walked away, step by slow step, leaving behind the courthouse, a place where justice had prevailed, but a mother's heart had quietly fractured. After the trial, my house returned to an eerie stillness. The unexpected knocks, the hurried phone calls, all ceased. Only the steady tick of the wall clock filled the silence, and sunlight slipping through the curtains, illuminating tiny motes of dust dancing in the air. Months bled into one another. Michael didn't call, no messages, no emails, no, "How are you, Mom?" I didn't blame him. I understood he was sifting through the wreckage of his marriage. Still, on quiet nights, when moonlight traced silver paths across my window pane, I often found myself holding the phone, staring at Michael Carter in my contacts, never pressing call, just looking, then setting it down. Being a mother, I learned, sometimes meant knowing when silence was the only way to let your child grow. The restitution payment arrived one morning in June, $40,000, a sum I hadn't seen in 8 long months. I opened the email from the bank. Deposit completed successfully. I thought I'd feel joy, but instead, I felt hollow. I sat in front of the computer for a long while. Then a thought, clear and sudden, arrived. If that money had once been a tool of deceit, then now it had to become something good. I used a small portion to repair the roof, replace the faded curtains, and finally buy a proper heater. As for the rest, I reached out to Father Thomas Reed and Grace. I want to start a small foundation, I said, as we sat in the parish office. I'll call it Grace Hands Foundation. I want to help elderly people who've been financially exploited by their own children or family, just like I was. Father Thomas Reed looked at me for a long moment, then smiled gently behind his thick glasses. Evelyn, this isn't just kindness. This is how God turns pain into the seed of something truly good. Grace, ever the pragmatic one, flipped open her notebook and began writing. We'll register it as a non-profit. I'll handle the legal side. Father Thomas Reed can represent the community group, and you'll be the founder. I chuckled softly, gripping my coffee cup. I don't want to be the founder, Grace. I'm just a mother who learned how to stand up again. 3 months later, Grace Hands Foundation officially opened. Our first office was in the basement of St. Mary's Church, just 3 desks, an old printer, and a wooden sign carved with the words, "Helping the Forgotten Find Their Voice Again." Each week, Father Thomas Reed and I met people who came to share their stories. An old woman tricked by her daughter into signing away her home, a 70-year-old man whose grandson drained his pension account, an 80-year-old widow whose signature was forged for a bank loan. Each story was a fresh wound, but I had learned how to listen without breaking. I simply held their hands and told them what I had lived, that the truth doesn't save you instantly, but it always arrives right on time. Grace worked tirelessly, reaching out to legal organizations, applying for grants, training the growing cadre of volunteers. The heart work consumed my days, a quiet devotion to listening, weaving solace in letters, and mapping the labyrinthine grief of others. One afternoon, amidst the soft rustle of tidied desks, Father Thomas Reed's voice, a low murmur, found me. Evelyn, he mused, isn't it strange? Their pain transmuted becomes a guiding light for others. A gentle smile touched my lips. Perhaps, I offered, that's how God rewrites the ending for those once betrayed. As the Grace Hands Foundation blossomed, its story began to unfurl beyond our walls. Reporters, drawn by the scent of scandal and resilience, sought interviews, eager to spotlight the audacious mother who dared sue her millionaire daughter-in-law. Talk shows beckoned, and a prominent newspaper even dangled a book deal. I declined every overture. I didn't want to become a tale for idle gossip. I confided to Grace Foster one quiet afternoon. I simply craved peace. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep a wound from bleeding anew. Grace nodded, her gaze understanding. Justice can be public, she agreed, but healing, Evelyn, must be private. With the descent of night, a new ritual took hold. A small candle, its flame a solitary heartbeat, glowed on the windowsill beside a framed photograph of Michael and me. "Where are you, Michael?" I'd whisper into the flickering light, the words a silent prayer. "I'm not angry. I just hope you've learned something from all this pain." The flame danced, casting a warm, unsteady glow on Michael's younger face, his innocent smile untouched by the harsh brush of betrayal. My fingers traced the cool glass, and a surprising warmth, like a nascent dawn, spread through my chest. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't erasure. It was a fierce choice not to allow the wound to dictate the narrative of my life. Father Thomas Reed, ever the gentle inquisitor, would sometimes ask, "Evelyn, have you truly forgiven her?" "Perhaps," I'd answer, my voice soft but steady. "Because I no longer wish her ill." But forget? No, the betrayed can forgive, but never truly forget. He'd offer a knowing smile. "You are still," he'd affirm, "the strong Evelyn Carter I've always known." One crisp autumn morning, as I tended to the porch plants, Grace arrived, a fresh envelope clutched in her hand. Evelyn, the Elder Justice Fund, just approved a long-term partnership with us. My gaze fell upon the envelope, a strange blend of pride and humility washing over me. Who could have imagined that the woman who once survived on church-donated canned goods now steered an organization dedicated to restoring dignity? I didn't cry, I simply smiled, a gentle, mist-soft smile that held the weight of a quiet triumph. Yet, on certain nights, the wind, whispering against the door, still carried the faint echo of my son's voice. Not yet, I knew. Michael wasn't ready. Perhaps he was still wrestling with his own forgiveness, paying a silent penance. I didn't blame him. I waited, not out of need for him, but out of a deeper hunger for truth to complete its circle. The truth about motherhood, about trust, about a love resilient enough to weather betrayal. I believed that one day he would knock, and I would open the door not because I had forgotten, but because I had learned to love without submitting to brokenness again. I lit the candle, watching its flicker dance across the frame, the scent of lavender drifting in through the window. My son, I whispered to the flame, a silent prayer. I don't need your apology. I only hope you remember this. Trust is our most precious gift. Once lost, it can take a lifetime to reclaim. The flame dwindled to a golden thread, and I watched it until it vanished completely. My heart, strangely calm, knew the storm had passed. This stillness finally was mine. That night rain poured, a relentless symphony from dusk till midnight. Wind lashed at the windows, scattering the lavender pots I'd brought in earlier. The living room's yellow lamp gleamed on the wet glass, mirroring fragments of memories I'd spent months carefully sorting. I was by the window, sifting through donor files for the upcoming Grace Hands meeting, when a knock, soft yet insistent, sliced through the storm's cacophony. It was past 10. Few dared knock so late unless... My hand trembled as I unlatched the door. Wind rushed in, rain splattering my coat as the door swung open. There, drenched under the relentless downpour, stood Michael. His hair clung to his forehead, his eyes red and weary. Time froze, suspended in the cold, wet air. The boy I'd once held, the one I'd taught to tie his shoes, now confronted me, trembling like a lost child. Mom, his voice cracked, a raw wound. Mom, I'm sorry. I've been so stupid. Before I could respond, he stumbled inside, collapsing to his knees on the wet floor. A broken sob tore through him, raw and unguarded, his shoulders shaking as he buried his face in his hands. I simply stood there, gazing at my son, the man who once believed he held all the answers, now broken in the very house that had instilled in him the value of honesty. I knelt beside him, my hand a gentle weight on his shoulder. Michael, get up, son, I murmured. Everyone stumbles. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's saving yourself. He lifted his head, tears mingling with the rain streaming down his face. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I doubted you. I let Vanessa manipulate me. I stayed silent while you suffered. Mom, I lost everything. I shook my head gently, guiding him to the sofa, drying his hair with a towel, just as I had when he was small. Each motion was deliberate, tender, as if too much haste might shatter this fragile moment of reunion. I don't need your apology, I said quietly. I only need you to remember, truth never arrives late. It only waits until we're brave enough to face it. He said nothing, his gaze fixed on the flickering fireplace. Outside, the rain beat against the window, a sound like the belated heartbeat of a soul awakening. After a long silence, Michael whispered, as if afraid of his own words, "Vanessa's gone, Mom." I paused, the towel still in my hand. She drained the savings, took what was left from the company, and disappeared. They say she ran off with a man she knew before we married. I closed my eyes. No anger, no surprise, just a quiet sadness settling in, like the rain that had already accepted the end of the storm. Michael's voice quivering. I tried calling, texting, looking everywhere, but she vanished. She only left one message. You trusted the wrong person. I took his hand, warm and firm. No, son, I corrected softly. You just realized the truth too late. But even when trust is broken, it's still what separates us from those who deceive. He rested his head on my shoulder, a child finally finding his way home. I felt his ragged, real breath, then a soft sob. I lost everything, Mom, my career, my money, my dignity. I stroked his hair, my voice calm. No, my son, what you found tonight is far greater, the heart that knows how to admit its mistakes. The rain persisted until nearly midnight. I brewed him ginger tea while he curled up by the fireplace, steam rising to mingle with the scent of burning wood, filling the room with warmth. I don't understand how you can stay so calm after everything, he said quietly. I offered a faint smile. Because I know justice isn't about making someone pay. It's about restoring balance. You see, Vanessa reaped exactly what she sowed. He nodded, gazing at the dancing flames. I only have you left now, Mom. No, I replied. You still have yourself, and what you choose to do from this moment on will decide whether you truly stand again. He was silent for a while, then suddenly, Mom, can I help with your foundation? I want to do something meaningful. Maybe start this weekend? I looked at him. His eyes held such raw sincerity that I had to fight the swell of emotion rising in my chest. Are you sure, son? Of course, Mom. I don't want to live the way I used to. I want to relearn how to use money to heal instead of to hurt. I nodded. Then come on Saturday. Father Thomas Reed will be happy to see you. From that day on, Michael became a fixture at the foundation every weekend. He'd arrive early, bearing coffee for everyone, then settle beside me, organizing files and penning thank you notes to donors. Some days he'd help Father Thomas Reed move chairs. Others, he'd accompany Grace to meet elderly victims and record their heartbreaking stories. They say time heals all wounds, but for me, it wasn't time. It was my son's transformation that became the true balm. One morning, I watched him from afar, seated at his desk, absorbed in a spreadsheet, his brown hair glinting in the sunlight. In that moment, I saw my little Michael again, the boy who used to help me wash dishes, who once asked, Mom, what does honesty mean? My heart swelled with tenderness and gratitude. Michael, I called softly. He looked up. You've crossed your own pain, son, I said, a smile gracing my lips. Not everyone has the courage to do that. He returned a faint smile, rare and genuinely radiant, a smile I hadn't seen in months. If it weren't for you, Mom, I don't know how long I'd still be drowning in guilt. I placed a hand on his shoulder, my voice warm. I didn't save you, Michael. You saved yourself. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall. Raindrops slid down the window pane, then vanished. The door he had once knocked on that stormy night now stood open, welcoming. No more rain pouring in, only the wind carrying the scent of damp earth and lavender. In that quiet moment, I understood. Life, no matter how broken, always leaves a door ajar for those who wish to return. And as I watched my son smile in that sunlit room, I knew the storm had truly passed, and peace had, at last, found its way home. One autumn morning, as soft sunlight spilled through the window, I sat at my desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. The breeze carried a faint lavender scent from the porch, my favorite fragrance, gentle yet patient, a quiet reminder of endurance. I picked up my pen. The ink flowed smoothly, like breath, and the first words appeared. Vanessa, thank you. Because of you, I learned the true value of honesty and the strength of self-respect. I paused, watching the ink spread faintly under the morning light. Strangely, there was no anger in me, only a quiet peace. I continued writing. If not for you, I might still believe that truth is something obvious, that kindness is always repaid in kind. The pen trailed across the page, lighter now, gentler. Truth only gains meaning when we're brave enough to defend it. I wrote, the words a silent echo of the lesson learned. You took my money, but in return, you gave me something money could never buy. Freedom. A soft smile played on my lips. I didn't know where Vanessa Carter was, if she'd found peace, or even if one day she'd read this. But if she did, I wanted her to know. I forgave you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to remain chained to the darkness you left behind. I set the pen down, gazing at the full page, a letter to no one, yet written with the piercing clarity of a heart once shattered, now whole. I folded it carefully, slipped it into a cream envelope, and opened the small wooden box my late husband, Richard Carter, used to keep birthday cards. Inside, nestled among family photos and a familiar note he'd once written. Evelyn, truth doesn't need to be shouted, only lived. I placed the letter. The soft click of the lid closing was a final chord. A chapter gently, resolutely shut. In the months that followed, the Grace Hands Foundation blossomed beyond my wildest imaginings. Each week, new faces appeared, some with tears still wet on their cheeks, some clutching messy folders, others simply needing a quiet space to finally voice the stories they'd buried in silence. I saw myself in their eyes, people once deceived, once belittled, yet still clinging to the bedrock belief that justice existed. With every right reclaimed, every truth brought to light, I felt a fragment of my own past snap back into place. Then, one day, Michael Carter arrived with 2 steaming cups of coffee. He settled beside me, his gaze sweeping over the room, now a vibrant tapestry of posters, charts, and the smiling faces on countless thank you cards. I can't believe how big your foundation has become, he murmured, his voice thick with pride and unexpected emotion. You really did turn pain into light. I chuckled softly, setting my cup down. Not the light of God, son, the light of justice. God forgives. Justice, however, never forgets. Michael nodded slowly, a thoughtful shadow in his eyes. Maybe I'm finally beginning to understand that. I looked at him, truly looked, and saw not the weak man who once fled from truth, but someone who now bowed to what was right. In that moment, my heart felt light as air. The fear of poverty, once a cold grip, had long since vanished. The days of silently waiting in line for canned food at the church were a distant memory, yet free of shame. If anything, they had taught me the profound dignity of endurance. I'd discovered something far more valuable than wealth, self-respect. When you hold on to that, you can never truly be defeated, even if you lose everything else. Now, every morning, I still rise early, brew my tea, and open the windows to greet the dawn. Sunlight spills across the framed photo of Richard and me, his arm around my shoulders, his eyes gentle and kind. If only you could see this, I whisper to him. You'd be proud, wouldn't you? If he were here, I know his smile wouldn't be for any money recovered, but for the untamed strength he'd always cherished in me, the strength to never let anyone else define my worth. That evening, after Michael had left, I remained in the office. I opened the worn journal that had chronicled my journey and penned the final line. The thief is gone, but the lesson remains. I paused, watching the sky outside bleed into a pale orange, rain tapping a soft rhythm on the roof. The distant church bells tolled, slow and deep, like the very breath of time. Closing the journal, I felt a serene completeness, as though I had finished a long, quiet prayer. No need for revenge, no yearning for applause, just the profound peace of knowing that even in a cruel world, honesty still found its place. I blew out the candle by the photo frame, its light dimming, leaving a faint, sweet trace of wax in the air. In the encroaching darkness, I whispered, "Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for taking everything, so I could finally learn that the most important thing in life isn't holding on. It's learning how to rise again." A year later, Texas bloomed. Lavender rioted by the porch, and the morning sky softened to the impossibly delicate blue of silk. The phone rang as I brewed tea. A call from Austin. A cheerful voice announced, "Mrs. Evelyn Carter. Congratulations, you've been selected as Texas Woman of the Year. The council honors those who've contributed to social justice and senior rights. We'd be honored if you'd speak at next week's ceremony." I froze, not from pride, but from a sudden, dizzying disbelief. A year ago, I was a 67-year-old widow, living on church aid. Now, they called me a symbol of peaceful justice. Life, it seemed, always found a way to turn, provided one simply kept believing in the stubborn truth. The ceremony unfolded in the grand hall of the city courthouse. I chose a simple, light blue dress, mirroring the uncluttered life I now led. No glamour, no pretense. As I stepped onto the stage, applause swelled, filling the room. In the second row, I saw Michael. In a crisp white shirt, his eyes glowing with an unvarnished pride I hadn't seen since he was a boy. The host beamed. Mrs. Evelyn Carter, founder of the Grace Hands Foundation, a woman who transformed personal pain into a force for justice, helping dozens of seniors reclaim their dignity. My hands trembled slightly as I approached the wooden podium, but my voice was steady. "Thank you," I began, "but today, I'm not telling my story. I'm telling the story of an unnamed mother, deceived by her own daughter-in-law, who lost both her money and her trust." The hall fell silent. Faces, young and old, male and female, leaned in, hanging on every word. I once thought that when someone betrays you, the best revenge is silence. But I learned something else. When someone steals your trust, reclaim it with truth. No shouting, no hatred, just truth, because truth holds a power no punishment ever could. Applause erupted long, heartfelt, a resonant wave. I paused, taking a deep breath. In the front row, I saw Michael, wiping his eyes. The look on his face almost broke me, not out of pity, but because I knew he finally, truly understood. When I spoke again, my voice softened, warm and low, like a whispered message for every soul ever broken by betrayal. Justice isn't just what happens in court. It begins the moment you find the courage to say, "Enough," even when the one who's wronged you is someone you love. That's the bravest act any mother, any father, any human being can do. After the ceremony, there were photos, handshakes, bouquets. I don't remember every face, but I remember a profound sense of peace. No bitterness, no resentment, just quiet fulfillment. As I stepped outside, a light rain began to fall. Texas skies always knew how to remind me that even in the rain, there is light. I stood under the awning, watching the drops glimmer under the streetlights, my heart lighter than air. Michael C. came up beside me, draping his jacket over my shoulders. "Mom," he said softly, "I've never seen you shine like this." I smiled, holding his hand. "It's not because of the award, son. It's because you're here, like the old days. Only now, you truly understand what honesty means." He smiled back, his eyes still misty. I do, Mom, and I promise I'll live by it. I looked up at the sky. The rain still fell, but it no longer felt cold. Inside me, a small light rose, the light of faith, of freedom, of new beginnings. That night, back home, I sat at my desk and opened my worn journal. I wrote the final line. A mother's greatest victory isn't winning in court. It's teaching her child the value of honesty. I closed the book, listening to the wind outside, the faint scent of rain still clinging to the roof. On the table, the small candle flickered, casting a soft glow over the family photo. Richard, me, and little Michael. 3 faces in one frame, 3 moments in time, bound by one truth. Love never dies. It just changes form. I smiled. My life was no longer loud, rich, or grand, but it was full, in its own quiet, peaceful way. If you're still here, listening, perhaps sitting in your own quiet room tonight, I want to say this. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of my story. If you've ever faced injustice or betrayal within your own family, share your story. I truly want to hear it because maybe your voice today could help someone else find hope tomorrow. And if you believe, as I always have, that the truth will always find its way home, please like, subscribe, and stay for the next stories. I'll tell you about women, about mothers, about those who once fell but rose again through the relentless light of justice and compassion. From Texas,